What's up, everyone? Dave, the Data Dude. Today we are going to be looking at how to search through our data frames. We're going to be looking how to search on an index and how to search on certain criteria of the data within the data frame. So let's go ahead and jump into it and get started. We're going to go ahead and import pandas as PD. We're also going to import our Pokemon CSV that we downloaded from Kaggle in the previous video. If you haven't had a chance, check that out so that you can follow along with what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and import that and take a look at our data and make sure everything looks correct, and it does. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to simply look at a index. So we're going to say df for data frame dot iloc for index location. And we're just going to say 0 because that's the first one of index. So you always start with 0. So that's going to bring us back just all of the information about Bulbasaur, and it's going to give his type, all of his information, all of his data. So great. So if we wanted to keep Bulbasaur in a data frame, we could simply just say another set of ticks right here, right? So now it's Bulbasaur and his data still in the data frame. So it's just data frame dot iloc for index location, double set of brackets, and then the index number that you are targeting. Okay. So what happens if you want to bring back only, let's say you want to bring back more than one. You want to bring back like 10 columns, right? So you would, we're going to go ahead and just comment that out. We're going to start with a new line, data frame iloc. We're going to have brackets again, but this time instead of doing a double set of brackets, we're just going to do 0-011. So that's going to bring us back our first up to 10 in our index. Notice that this is a non-inclusive list, so it doesn't actually get the number 11, but it brings back 11 rows of data since 0 starts the index. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's kind of how you can remember how that works. You want your 10th index, you say up to 11. So that is how you get a list of indexes pulled back. So if you wanted to get a couple, you can do it that way. Now, if you wanted to look at something specific, like you wanted to look at only a specific column or two, you can just say 0. So now you can see it brings back only the hashtag column, or you can just say semicolon, we'll say 5. So again, this is a non-inclusive list, and it brings back the index of the first 5 columns. So we're doing the index of 1 through 10, and then we're getting the column index of 0 through 5. I don't want y'all to miss that. So essentially, we're only pulling back a couple of columns because we said we only wanted the first 5 of the first 11 rows, or first 11 rows. You might not be using that too much. It's just important to know all the different ways that you can walk through the data and what you can see. So that is how you will pull back only specific columns and specific indexes. So the next thing we're going to look at is well, if it's a word. If Bulbasaur was our index, how can we look up a word? So we're going to come back up to our data frame that we imported our Pokemon CSV, and we're just going to say index. We're going to let it autocomplete index column equals, and we're going to say name. So now it's going to import that data frame with the index column as name prior to us having to do any more code. So let's just take a look and make sure it did that. Yes, it did. So we got Bulbasaur, and name is now the index. So if you want to find the Bulbasaur index, let's see what happens if we just do .iloc 0. Okay, it still brings up the Bulbasaur as the index because that's at 0 location, and you can even still do things like that, and it'll bring it back just like that, right? So it's the same thing as it was before, but now Bulbasaur is the name, and you can see how you can use it, the same way. Now, the powerful thing that you can use if you want to is you can do things like this now, since there's a word as the index. So we're going to come in here. We're just going to start over. We're going to say dataframe.loc, so lock. And you're going to do a double set of brackets. So it's basically saying look up an index. That's what that double bracket is doing. So we're going to say whatever we said, Bulbasaur. Now you have Bulbasaur as the index being looked up. Okay, so just so that we can see our data again. The powerful thing about this also is that if you wanted to look up Charmander, oops, excuse me. Now you can pull up Charmander as well, right? So you can use this to manipulate your data in a way that you only pull back the exact data that you want. And, you know, if we wanted to look up whoever this is, now you have a list that is comprised of only the specific index information that you want to see. So that is something that you would probably use in the future. So this is the format for it. Dataframe.location. And if you put double brackets around it, it recognizes that the index, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and comment that out. And we're going to re-import our data frame without the name being the index again, just so that we can have our data as it was originally. Data frame, it looks good. We're going to get rid of this by pressing double D and getting rid of that cell. Okay, so now our data is the exact same as it was when we first started. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to expand upon this .loc or location by doing a couple of how can we get only specific data. You can come in and say .loc brackets, just like we did before, but instead of putting double brackets to show we want index, we're just going to put a single set of brackets to show that we're talking to the data itself, not the index. So what do you do here? You say data frame open brackets apostrophes name. So we're saying this column. So data frame locate from this column where it equals, and we're going to do Bulbasaur. Boom. So that is what that does. That says data frame, I want to know the location of, I want to see the location of this column name, this column where it equals Bulbasaur. Right? Now, that only gives us one set of information back, so it's not like it's a ton of information that we would need if we're trying to look up anything in particular. But let's say that we have type 1, right? Type 1 has a bunch of data in it. So let's look up a water type. Well, now, wow, you've got 112 rows of Pokemon that are type 1 water types. So now you're starting to see how using this could limit your data down to something that you're specifically wanting. So what is it doing behind the scenes when it does this? So all it's doing is in your data frame, it's just pulling back a list of Boolean. Is index 1 true? No. True? No. True? No. True? No. And it's going through and saying this index is considered false because it does not equal water. You know, we know that index 0 is Bulbasaur and he's a grass type. So this is false, this is false, this is false, and so forth and so on. But now, you know, we've got 112, and, you know, that's great. That's a lot of information. We might be looking at something specific. We might want to know not only do we have to know what type 1 water, what type 1 that it equals water. We might also need to know that type 2 equals something else. So how you handle that is you use multi-arguments. So you would just come here and put this in parentheses. That is your first argument. You want to say type 1 equals water. That is what I have to have first. Then you would put an ampersand or a sign or a and, however you label that. You put an and sign and then another set of parentheses for a secondary argument. So you would come in here and see the exact same format and say data frame, what column in that data frame are we looking at? Type 2. And what do we need type 2 to equal? Ice. So here we can see that we have a data frame that has, or we have data that type 1 equals water and the type 2 equals ice, separated into their own specific arguments, joined by this and sign, showing that that is what they both must have, or that each column must have in order to pull back the data. So what happens if we wanted to know if it was or ice? So we could say right here, you would just change that into a bar. So a bar in programming and Python specifically, or Pandas specifically, a bar means or. So you can type that and it's going to say either water type, type 1 equals water, or type 2 equals ice. You can see here it's a rock and an ice type, right? And you can take that one step farther by combining even more things. So if we wanted to know, this is going to be a little bit complicated, so don't let me lose you here. If we wanted to say type 1 water and, right, type 2 equals water, or TF, what column are we talking about? Type 2 equals dark. So this is another type of, type 2 element, I guess it could have. So what happens if we pull back this? Well, now we got a whole, we got more data, and it gets a little wonky when you have ors in there, because you might have things that come back as rock and dark that have nothing to do with water or ice. So you just need to be super careful when you're using the or sign. But you can set the arguments to have nested arguments. And this is where the power of, Pandas really comes into play, because you're able to really limit your data on a very specific set of information that you're looking for. So we know that this is the first argument. This is the second argument. This is the third argument. We're going to take this second and third argument and combine them. See how we did that? So this is the first argument, and then we have a second argument. So both of these conditions must be met, but in our second argument, we can have either ice or dark. So now we have water, ice, water, dark, water, ice. That is the true power that you get with dealing with Pandas, is that you can look through your data, sample your data, test your data, and see what options you have available within your data. So that's all we're going to talk about today. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions, or if there's anything that you'd like to see, so that we can